Hi, my name is Sarah Bentley Pearson, and I am excited to share my podcast, which features wonderful talent that I've been so lucky to discover in the Southeast. This was born out of a list that I created in 2015 called Sarah's List. And through my work in real estate, which I've been doing since 2005, and styling work, and just my personal life and my personal interests, I've been able to meet so many wonderful people, and I'm excited to share them with you. Ash Joshi is here with me to discuss our kids and the community and what we can do to protect them and arm them to protect their future, but also to be good parents and to know the facts of what's going on in our community and educate ourselves and our children. So thank you for being here.
You're very welcome. Happy to do it.
So really, I was looking forward to this because I feel like it's very relevant to my life with two 10th graders right now. So, I was looking over your information that you sent me, and you went to Michigan in political science, which I thought was like a really good undergrad major to have. And then, so did you know at the time you wanted to be a lawyer in the future?
Yes, me and about 90% of the people in our political science classes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that a normal undergrad major for lawyers?
It is, because it's interesting work and law school doesn't have any prerequisites. So you really can major in anything you want. So you may as well major in something you find interesting.
Yeah. Well, being from DC, I was around a lot of political science majors. And did you go to law school with Marvin Soleimani? Because he went to Emory as well.
Yes, but we were not in the same class.
Oh, okay. Interesting. But he's been on the podcast too. So why don't you tell the audience about what you do in your practice and what brought you to focus now on the field that you're in?
Well, it's general criminal defense practice. So that's what I've always done, is something in criminal law. I went to Emory Law School, and I was initially a public defender when I came out of law school in Fulton County, which means I represented folks who were indigent. They had no money. They couldn't afford an attorney. And as you can imagine, in Atlanta, the public defenders represent about 80% of all the defendants who come through the court system in Fulton County.
Really?
So it's a very challenging work. And then I switched. I was a prosecutor for about 5 years in Fulton County. I started off doing general crimes, kind of run-of-the-mill, whatever comes down the road. And then there's specialized units in that office. So for about a year, I only prosecuted murder cases. And then for about the last year and a half, I only prosecuted sex crimes. And then I opened up my own practice, and it's been that since.
And do you represent a lot of Buckhead families who come to you like, oh, my kid got pulled over, this, that, and the other?
Yes, that all the way to the much more serious cases that we see, yes.
So why not, what I'd like to know and discuss is, I think every generation, my husband's a little bit older than me, and sometimes I think, oh God, he just sounds like somebody 100 years ago, like this generation. But really, this generation, from your opinion, really have it worse than past generations?
I think they have it better in some things and worse in other things. From a creature comfort standpoint, I think kids have it better. There's more kids with phones, TVs in their rooms, cars when they turn 16. Those things are pretty normal now. It's not just the couple rich kids in the school who might have a car or have their own phone or things of that nature. So from a creature comfort standpoint, I think it's easier. I don't think kids are walking to school 2 miles each way.
But it creates zero grit.
Correct. That's the flip side. Where I think it's harder is some of the anxieties that we all had as teenagers, the insecurity, that nobody likes me, am I popular enough, et cetera, et cetera. Those were fairly self-contained in our world and you felt like you were the only one who had those feelings.
I think they feel that too, though, that they're the only one feeling it.
But now they've got, in part, I think they feel that maybe even more than we did, Those feelings, I think, are stronger because social media constantly bombards kids with all the great things other people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas you and um, I might have known about one of my parents' friends whose kid was going to Harvard. I might have known about one person like that. Now these kids today know about everybody like that. And I think it makes them feel even more isolated than we did, even more inadequate or insecure than maybe we felt, since ours was fairly localized insecurity relative to maybe your few friends. But now it's relative to the world.
Well, and I think you could look at it like with 24-hour news, like you're just constantly bombarded with negativity.
Yes, yes. It's either here's the terrible things that are going on in the world, or here are the people your age who are doing incredible things that you haven't even conceived of doing yet. And I think both those things are incredibly stressful, and they reach younger and younger people now. So I think the world is more challenging for young folks in that regard. I think it's easier for them in the ways we talked about before from the creature comfort standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Do you think kids are doing more drugs now than in generations past? I mean, I am sure that parents of, our age with teenagers in the 60s were flipping out with acid and marijuana and everything like we are. And looking back at movies of The Doors and Morrison, it looked like it was pretty crazy, but maybe again, that was, just a subculture and not as magnified as it is today.
I think drugs are more accessible than when we were teenagers. And I think some of that goes back to social media. So, for example, let's say you or I were 17 or 18 and we wanted to buy marijuana. You had to know somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who probably had a very small amount that you could buy. Now, via the internet, via social media, you can access drug dealers. They are literally people who are advertising what they have, how to get it from them, et cetera, et cetera. Not to mention what you could do or what kids are able to do through the quote dark web, where there's a whole other marketplace.
Yeah, I don't even understand the dark web.
It's a section of the internet that you have to be able to find, so you have to have some amount of savvy to do that. But there are literal marketplaces for any kind of drug you can think of, whether it's cocaine, heroin, Xanax, Percocet, and people post their prices, so you know exactly how much you're buying. It gets mailed to you. Most of this is happening from folks who are outside the country, outside the United States, so it becomes more difficult for our law enforcement to put their hands on them.
Mm-hmm.
But that is an entire underground world that maybe always existed, but now it's at everybody's fingertips instead of having to know the person who to know the person, et cetera, which can be hard. Even if you know them, maybe you don't have a phone number, maybe you can't figure out how to get it, et cetera. That was the world we lived in.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's all readily available, and I don't think that kids' judgment is any better or worse than ours was. I don't think a 14-year-old's judgment today versus 1985 is very different. I think it's the access to those things that has changed, which means that kids are going to do more because more things are accessible.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Let's get into what you as an attorney you're getting calls about, and what are kids doing that you need to get involved, and what can we tell parents and kids, if they're listening, what definitely not to do. So let's start first with the first part, which is what are they getting into? What are they getting in trouble with?
Well, there's two things. There's drugs and sex. Those are the two things that kids are exposed to more. Teenagers are exposed to much more than we were. And both of those, for these developing minds, are an incredible challenge to say no to. And then once they don't say no to it, then what does it do to those developing minds? So we talked about the accessibility of drugs. They're very accessible. Some things are over the counter. Vaping is a problem for preteens. Vaping has reached a point, we're talking about nicotine vaping. It's reaching 7th graders.
That even bothers me more because then you can be addicted your entire life.
Yes. And you get addicted to inhaling something. And that can lead to other substances once the vaping maybe doesn't provide the sufficient effect on the user.
Mm-hmm.
An old one that has reappeared is nitrous oxide. We used to call it whippets. And kids are using that. Now, I think that